Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at an excellent book which has come to us from Edward Elgar Publishing. They're an independent publishers specialising in high quality, excellent research documents in the form of, in many cases, of handbooks for specifically, in our case, law. And the book that I'm looking at today is the Research Handbook on Copyright Law, which has now come out in a second edition, and it's been edited by Paul Torremans. These books, which come to us from Elgar, are available as they are as actually printed publication handbooks. They're also available as online materials as well, and so it will help if you are researching a particular subject to know that they are available in a number of different ways. Now, Elizabeth and I have discussed this book, and she was the lead writer on the review, and we've given it a title for our book review: Recent Changes and Trends in Copyright Law Worldwide. And because that's exactly what you're getting with this book, let's have a look at it first of all. It's a hardback and an interesting book to boot. There we go, hardback there. That's the front of the book. Interesting, very modern picture at the front, if you like that sort of thing. There we go. There is the side, the spine, and then at the back you've got quite a lot of information. You've got some quotes, then you've got a little bit of content about the book itself and a little bit about the author. Then there's some blurb at the bottom about Edward Elgar. Now, the book itself runs to something approaching 600 pages. There's the index at the back. It's by page numbering, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find what you're looking for. And after that, there is the index itself. It's a fairly substantial index. Then we're right on the last page here, one of the last chapters. You can see that there is a conclusion at the back of the chapter. Then you've got some footnoting, which you can see there, the regular footnoting, which is very helpful. If we go to the front of the book, that's the list of the Research Handbooks and Intellectual Property series which Edward Elgar have produced. And obviously a very substantial number of books. And then you've got the main front page of the book there. Then you've got some blurb about the book itself with the ISBNs and the details about the online side. Then you've got the various contents. This is an edited book, so there are contributors. There are a total number of 23 pages, and each chapter has the name of the person who's contributed. This is the list of contributors, a large number of people involved in that. I can't mention them all by name, but thank you all to all of you individually for what you've produced. Then Professor Torremans has written a short preface dated the 15th of December 2016, talking about the introduction of this new volume. And then we go straight into the first chapter, and you can see this, the basic set copy there, and then you've got actual referencing footnotes at the bottom, and that's how it runs through. There is some subheading, but there is not basically any form of paragraph numbering. And you do have, which is the structure of a lot of these books, a conclusion at the back, which is quite helpful because it actually gives some idea of, it brings together the basic points which the authors are trying to extract. And this is the middle of the book there. You can see again quite substantial footnoting, which is helpful. It's a heavy tome in the sense of weight and authority, if I can put it that way. And I've always been very pleased with the Elgar books that they've sent us for review in the past. They do centre on high quality academic work, and it does make your life much easier if you're dealing with research at the postgraduate doctoral level to be able to have access to this sort of work. It's very helpful for practitioners, of course, as well. So what do we say about it? Well, as I say, our headline was Recent Changes and Trends in Copyright Law Worldwide, and this is what basically it's saying. Copyright has become a fast-moving area of intellectual property, so says Professor Paul Torremans, who has so ably edited the new second edition of this informative handbook, published, as I say, by Edward Elgar and part of Elgar's Research Handbooks and Intellectual Property series, which is quite a large series of books now. It's grown quite substantially in the last few years. Now, the dizzying pace of change in this field is, as the editor adds, reflected in the wealth and diversity of copyright research, and the book presents a judiciously selected sampling of this research from a team of 24 international contributors. And the editor has certainly succeeded in his aim of presenting what he calls, quote, a mix of interesting topics, yes, and varying opinions from experts in this field from around the world. And I think, again, it adds a great deal to the basis of copyright law as we currently understand it in the early parts of the 21st century, because things have changed so dramatically from when I first started reading law, which was a long time ago, when we didn't really have the same sort of approach at all, and the concept of the words intellectual property were not regularly used, I have to say, in those days, but that is rather a while ago. Now, interesting topics, of course, in this book include, for example, the tensions inherent in the concept of originality, always an interesting point, and the right to communicate with the public. And of course, another example, the oft recurring clash between morality and public policy, all of which has been part and parcel of the problems, really, of a developing internet and the way in which information technology has moved in what is now the fourth industrial revolution, which is the digital era. Now, speaking of which, it's important to note the discussion concerning the established principles of European law, that the commercialisation of subject matter contrary to public policy or morality must be denied domestic trademark and patent rights, or in many cases copyright and related rights protection. And I don't really see any changes because of Britain's decision to leave the EU. That's not really going to change a great deal in the short term anyway, because these protections are clearly sensible. The only thing, of course, which is why people voted to leave, the fact really is the interference. But at the end of the day, we want to protect our own activities, whether in what area of trade it might be or whatever other area, and as a member state be able to have our own self-determination, which of course is what the issue's really always been about as we prepare to leave the EU. Now, again, another interesting footnote in this book illustrates the means by which copyright can intrude into almost everything. And I have to say that a lot of people don't realise that. And probably 40 years ago, when I first started, so more like 50 years ago actually now, when I first started reading law, things were really very different in the late 60s and the early 70s. And of course an example is the famous bikini ban imposed in France, for instance. No longer allowed on French beaches, the burkini, which is a sort of onesie with a hood for female swimmers, has been condemned quite rightly in the view of many by the French Prime Minister, Mr. Macron, as immoral due to its representation of the enslavement of women. Now you can see the overlap here between basic laws and, if you like, jurisprudence and legal theory, concepts of legal philosophy and so forth, about how far you go with natural law, moral law and so forth. So you can see the issues, and a decision made obviously now with the bikini, and certainly the previous French Prime Minister, Mr. Sarkozy's decision concerning coverings of the face. So you can see the issues very clearly overlapping. Now the book of course covers, in addition to this, a wide range of other topics which come under the scrutiny of copyright, from online search engines, the OSEs, to resale rights, musical creativity, always an important one, cultural heritage, and much more across a number of jurisdictions, all of which I think are very relevant to the newer generations coming up, who are viewing this in a rather different way perhaps from people of my generation, who grew up in a rather different society where there was a very limited amount of technology available. Now that there's a huge amount available, it has expanded things. I mean, even taking a photograph used to cost a fortune in the 1960s and 70s, and it therefore was left to people with quite a large amount of money and the equipment to be able to do it. Today, you've got your mobile phone and it's a piece of cake to take a photograph, and it's the same with photographing documents and the whole issue of what is an original document, which has been a problem in the criminal courts and in the civil courts, of course, for a very long time. So this book is really quite interesting. It comes at a timely moment, I think, when we're reassessing where we are in 2018. Now, researchers in this complex and often controversial area obviously see the matters as ever changing and ever fascinating as areas of intellectual property law, and they'll appreciate the research resources that this book actually provides. It's extensively footnoted, for example, and especially useful 38-page index at the back I did find helpful, certainly facilitating looking things up, which of course can be a problem sometimes, although I have to say with most of the Elgar books I've been very impressed with the quality, and they save a lot of time, I think, for people who are conducting scholarly researchers. It's timely and up to date, of course, the book. It's a compact volume which should be essential reading in our view for IP lawyers as well as academics and those tasked with decisions relating to public policy. Always an interesting area, and one that I'm sure is going to continue to expand as the century opens up in front of us. The publication date is cited at the 27th of October 2017, and I'm recording this at the beginning of 2018 on a sunny day, and all sorts of things are going to happen this century and in this year. Now let's have a look at the research handbook again. There's the front, the spine, and then the back. Let's say it's a heavy book. Just opening it in the middle. Just looking here, this is chapter 10, the remuneration of authors and performers in copyright contract law. Very important. I've been published a few times, and I like to keep an eye on what I can do. This is actually as an author rather than as a performer, although what I'm doing here is a performance and it's a one-off. Everyone is. There's the paragraph numbering there. Sorry, not the paragraph numbering, rather the footnoting. There isn't any paragraph numbering as such, but you see the footnoting there. And there is some subheading of sorts. And as I've indicated, there's always a conclusion generally with each of the chapters, which I think is very helpful. This one looks at dispute resolution procedure, very popular at the moment, of course. But again, there's a practical element to this, as well as the fact that there's a lot of research material in there. And as I say, a final point, I'd like to thank the professor and his team very much indeed for producing this work, and also the fact that Elgar are continuing to produce these first-class books. We do appreciate the amount of work that goes into them, and the fact they're on the market. It makes life a lot easier trying to find things, especially in an era now where it's not about the ability just to get a book, it's about the selecting of the information, because there's so much which is available for us to read. So a big thank you to all the contributors and everybody involved in this excellent publication. Bye-bye.